I see that it is 7:10, but I'm not sure that we have everybody in attendance that we need quite yet. So I'll hold calling us to order for another minute or two.
Ben Davis, did you see my chat from Jake?
No.
He needs you to turn your microphone volume up if you can.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
Thank you.
See. Michelle, is Rebecca back with us?
Yes, I've been here.
Yep.
Great.
Would you like me to do a roll call?
Yes, please.
Councillor Cornell?
I'm here.
Councillor Sweeney?
Here.
Councillor Davis?
Present.
Councillor Hennon is absent. Councillor Fury?
I am here.
Councillor Norton?
Present.
And Mayor Mofold is absent. Thanks.
Here we go. And with that, I would like to call this February 1st, 2021 meeting of the City Council of Whitefish to order. And with that, I would like to ask our friend Richard Hildner to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you can make that happen. Michelle, can you unmute?
No, I got it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Richard. All right, next we have communications from the public. Do we have any member of the public that wishes to make comment tonight on anything other than what is on anything other than what is on our public hearings this evening? If so, it's time for them to speak. Michelle?
Thank you. So if you'd like to speak towards anything that's not on the public hearing, please raise your hand by hovering over your name in the participants list and click the hand icon. You can also, if you're on the phone, *3 will raise your hand, or the 3 dots to the left of the X at the bottom of your screen. Or you can send me a chat at the bottom right side with the chat word. Type your question, press enter, and it'll come through. Richard, you can unmute your mic and have the floor.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Deputy Mayor, honorable councilors, Richard Hildner, 104 5th Street. And I'm wishing to speak on the question that will come up later in the meeting, but is not the subject of a public hearing. And that is specifically with regards to parking on 4th Street between Lupfer and Baker. And that's the area, as Mr. Workman points out, an area that would require the loss of approximately 3 parking spaces. I've brought this up to council several times before, both before I was on council, while I was on council, and now another time. And I think it was going to come up last year at about this time, but it was probably just an oversight. I think it's important to eliminate those 3 parking spaces. The one particularly on the south side of the credit union, it's a about a 20-foot space. And it is really, as I'm sure that Mr. Workman will point out, it really tightens up that whole road, so people making a left-hand turn onto 4th from Baker can get kind of stuck there, particularly on icy roads if somebody's coming down that hill with the brakes on full and still not stopping. So I think as a public safety issue, those parking spaces are problematic at best. It's been argued in the past that perhaps there's not a problem since there haven't been that many accidents there. But I think it's also important to look at the potential for accidents. And even though you don't have the accident reports, what you also don't have are the near misses. So I encourage you to go ahead and approve going forward with a public hearing, particularly on those 3 spaces on 4th Street. And that's my comment today. So thank you very much, and appreciate you staying the course on masking.
Thank you, Richard. Michelle, anybody else?
Rhonda Fitzgerald would like to.
Hi, thanks. I also would like to make a comment on the some of the requests for parking changes. I agree with Richard that that one spot on this, let's see, in front of the credit union there on 4th, it makes it difficult to turn left off of Baker onto 4th Street. But I'm not sure that all the other spaces need to be eliminated, because as I read the letters and the memo, it seemed like one of the intentions was to allow people to speed quickly through the neighborhood to avoid the intersection. And that, of course, is not a desirable result. So although it would be nice to eliminate that one spot Richard's talking about for safety purposes, the opposite outcome would be very undesirable in that neighborhood. So I hope you keep that in mind. And then a couple others. I think the request to add parking on Baker between First and Railway would be a problem. I think you guys just saw all the diagrams about where the streets are most congested in Whitefish, and that block north of the couple blocks north of 2nd and all the way over the viaduct is the most congested area in town, and there's not much capacity for widening. And so I would hope that you would not create parking spaces in a place where you need roadway capacity for turning lanes and stuff. And then just going through it, I have no opinion on I think it's Montana Avenue. I'm not really familiar with driving that road at all, so I'll pass on that one. And then the downtown master plan is very clear that the preference is not to lose any on-street parking in the downtown business district B3. So the giving up 150 feet of parking area on Spokane there in front of the JCCS office building, we know they already require more parking than they have. And so I would suggest that you look perhaps further south on Spokane to parking that's less utilized and isn't in the B3 district. The next block south is R4. And maybe a temporary seasonal parking restriction for the snow bus would be acceptable. I'm not sure, because you'd have to ask the neighbors, but I think right down there in the central business district area, those parking spaces are heavily utilized all the time by the businesses there. And we want to keep our downtown vibrant and vital. So I would hope that you would maybe look a little further for a spot. Thank you for allowing me to make that public comment.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Jenny, sorry, Jenny, I'm going to butcher your last name. Cloutier, she'd like to speak. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
I wish I could change my last name to Smith or something. Anyway, so about the stop, like looking at us changing that parking, if you all don't see that as a viable option, then we're just more than willing to work with some way to make it so that we can look to the future. Like what we were just listening to, I think that traffic is just going to increase, and having a bus that is stopping traffic in that important corridor is really going to become increasingly more problematic. So a solution of some sort that we can actually build bump outs so that we can not be stopping traffic on 93, but provide a way to lessen traffic through bus stops and bus service is really what we're looking towards. If there is no way for that to happen on 3rd in that zone that Rhonda is talking about, then wherever, like, we just want bus stops that are going to get the bus off of the main road. And so that would be the ideal location, being as it would serve all of these downtown businesses and have great visibility. But if it needs to bump further to the south, that is wonderful as well. I just trying to start the process of us looking ahead at a more vibrant public transportation system. And I think actual bus stops that pull off of the road are going to be part of that. And then I park by the, like, 2 times a week. This is totally not as the BMCA, just as the public, but I use those parking spots to go to the post office like a couple days a week. And I noticed that there are a lot of folks that do the same thing, just because getting in and out of the post office can be incredibly tricky. So I think those spots are utilized for the post office a ton, and it's useful. So I guess that's 2 totally different, 2 separate things, sort of like what Rhonda said.
Great, thank you, Jenny.
If anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand now or send in the chat. I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, with that said, I will ask for any communications from any volunteer boards from the public. Is there anybody in the public that has a volunteer board report? All right, not hearing any or seeing anything from Michelle. Any member of the council have a board report that they wish to deliver?
Frank, this is Rebecca. The Strategic Housing Subcommittee met, and things are moving forward with the snow lot, choosing contractors. The city Public Works is going to help with that process. And then our low-income affordable housing units we're going to try to have some type of a celebration and open house, even though we don't know exactly if that's going to happen with COVID or how that will work. But that should be coming up in the next month or 2. And then Ben knows more about this, but the legislature is potentially going to eliminate the possibility of having inclusionary zoning. And so our staff is testifying, and Ben will be doing that tomorrow. And Ben, I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Any other volunteer board reports? Okay, not hearing any. I think we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any changes or discussion on the consent agenda? And if not, can I have a motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion with some changes to approve with 5 changes. And should I just go ahead and say them, or does someone?
Rebecca, I think you can proceed.
Okay.
You're fine.
I've already emailed these to Michelle, so I'll make it quick. Page 21, paragraph starting Chris Schustrom, 4th line down, Glacier Park, the G and the P should be capitalized. Page 23, under the paragraph discussion, 3rd line down, add an apostrophe S to Mary's. Under Mayor Mulfeld, 2nd line, eliminate the E after 4. Page 24, as of right, 4th paragraph down, as of right now, 2nd line, Gianforte, add an S at the end of lifts. Page 25, Mayor Mulfeld, paragraph, 2nd line down, and then add an ED at the end of install. And that's it. Thank you, Michelle, for doing that every single time. Thank you.
And is there a second to Rebecca's motion as amended?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Fury. All those in favor?
Aye.
I guess the best way to do this, Michelle, is for you to take a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Quinnell,
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney,
Agree, aye.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
and Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that's approved unanimously. And we'll move on to our public hearings this evening, which there are 3. Our first this evening is a consideration of a request from Curtis and Christine Feeney for a conditional use permit located at 1656 West Lakeshore Drive to construct an accessory apartment above an existing garage. Zone WR1, one family residential district. With that, I think this is Wendy.
Yep. Good evening. So the request for you again is a conditional use permit for an accessory apartment at 1656 West Lakeshore Drive. They are proposing to add a second floor above an existing garage that was constructed in 1996. Access will be off of the existing driveway that accesses the primary structure. The property is about half an acre and currently developed with a single family residence and a detached garage. The property is surrounded by residential uses, state park, and the Whitefish Lake. Again, the zoning is WR1. The growth policy designation is suburban. The property is served by all public services and facilities. We did our regular noticing to adjacent landowners within 300 feet. We posted a sign on the property, placed a legal in the paper, and as of today, we still have not received any comments from neighbors. And we also notice advisory agencies. We review conditional use permits according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. Just to hit some of the highlights. Again, the property has a WR1 zoning, which is an urban designation, whereas the land use designation out there is suburban residential. So the zoning, the underlying zoning doesn't comply with the growth policy, but the use and the purpose and intent for single family residential does comply with the land use designation. Under compliance with zoning regulations, according to the application and was confirmed at the public hearing, the garage is more than 600 square feet and built at 7 foot 4 inches from the side property line, where the standard today would require a 10-foot setback. And so they're not eligible for that reduced 6-foot setback. And our non-conforming section of the zoning talks about any expansion of a non-conforming structure has to meet the setbacks, which is 10 feet. So either the second floor needs to be stepped in 2 feet or they need to do a boundary line adjustment with their neighbors. So that was kind of revealed at the planning board public hearing. In addition, under zoning, the height that they're proposing with the information that they submitted showed it at 31 feet for an accessory structure where the standard is at 24 feet. So both of these items are recommended conditions of approval that we'll talk about in a second. The zoning requires 2 parking spaces for the single family home and 1 for the apartment. It looks like there's adequate space on site for that. And then we also require that driveways, the first 80 feet be paved. And so that's also a recommended condition. The site's suitable, everything can be fit on the property, all the parking and circulation, there's adequate space. It's served by all public services and facilities. It shouldn't impact the neighborhood. There's a number of these out in that neighborhood out there. So there's single family homes with a few different accessory structures out there. So the planning board did hold a public hearing on January 21st. The applicant as well spoke at the hearing. Once it was determined that the garage does exceed 600 square feet, the planning board did amend condition number 5 to say the accessory building footprint exceeds 600 square feet. Therefore, the second floor accessory apartment must meet the primary setbacks of 10 feet. And then as far as others, kind of standard conditions of approval, the driveway needs to be paved, the building height must be reduced to 24 feet. We do need to get the standard deed restriction that we get for all of these accessory structures, and short-term rental is not permitted. Can I answer any questions for you?
Any questions? Any questions for council, from council for Wendy on our staff report?
I have one for Wendy. It's Rebecca. Wendy, so they wouldn't be encouraged to get a variance because of that setback?
That's another option they have.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we saw something like this over in the Old Town part of town where I remember when they built, they had to go in. But I just, yeah, okay, so they have three options: a boundary
Yep.
line adjustment,
Yep.
a variance, or to bring it in. Okay, so,
Yep.
all right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else have any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Okay, I guess with that, I'd like to open up the public hearing on this matter and give the proponent or the of this matter, if they're participating this evening, if they'd like to speak, I'd like to give them the opportunity to speak first.
Wendy, do you know if they are on? I don't see.
Yeah, it's David Barnes. Looks like he just muted him or unmuted himself.
Okay, thank you. David, I believe you have the floor if you'd like to.
Are we unable to get him connected?
Well, he's connected, but I'm not sure, maybe, I don't know if he's speaking or if we just can't hear his mic. I'm not sure.
Well, I cannot hear anyone. I don't know if anybody else can hear him, and I don't see him on the list here in front of us.
He's down further on the list under the Dean's. But it looks like his mic is unmuted. Can you send me a chat, David, to see what's going on, if you're able to speak?
Michelle, why don't we move on to any other public comment we've got, and maybe we can figure out how to get him unmuted or connected as we move forward here. Are there any other public comments on this hearing?
For those of you who'd like to speak towards this, as I mentioned in the chat, please raise your hand by hovering your mouse over the participants list and find your name, right-click the hand icon. You can also *3 on your phone pad if you're connected by phone. 3 dots to the bottom of the page next to the red X also has the hand icon. Or you can send me a chat. Just hit the chat word to the bottom right of your screen, type your question and hit enter, and it'll come through. David, you just muted, so can you send me a chat to let me know if you're having issues? I'm not getting a chat from him, so.
Okay. I'm sorry, but I think given where we are, I think we'll just move on and put this back to the council for a motion and any further discussion.
I'll make a motion. This is Rebecca, to approve WCUP 20-02 with the staff report and conditions. I don't need to say anything other than, what about the number 5, Wendy? Is if we just say accept findings of fact in the staff report
Well, it's as recommended by the planning board.
as recommended by the planning board then.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's been moved by Councilor Norton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
seconded by Councilor Fury. Did I think I saw that correctly? Rebecca, anything you'd like to say about your
I
motion?
think it was Ben, actually, so let's give it to
Okay.
him.
I'm happy to do that. I'm not watching this that well. It's just like everybody's there. Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Davis.
No, not really. I just am really supportive of accessory units. So I'm glad that the neighbors didn't have any problems with it and that this setback issue is discovered with 3 options for resolution. Thank you, Wendy.
Great. All right. Any other comments? All right. With that, Michelle, can we take a roll call?
Counselor Quinnell,
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney,
Aye.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Just as a general housekeeping matter, does it appear to the rest of the group that my camera is off or that I'm not on screen?
Now we can see you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I received a note that my camera might be off, and so I thought I would check. All right. Well, thank you. We'll move on to our second public hearing this evening. A consideration of request from Emily Rindell on behalf of Liquid Library LLC for a conditional use permit located at 206 Lupfer Avenue, Suite 101 for a new restaurant with a beer and wine license, Zone WB3 General Business District.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, this project is located at 206 Lupfer. It's the new commercial building that a lot of you guys have probably seen kind of pop up on the corner of 2nd and Lupfer there. It'll be in Suite 101, so it's on the first floor of the building, and it'll be next to what it sounds like will most likely be kind of a small art gallery right there. Emily Rindall, on behalf of Liquid Library LLC, is requesting the CUP to operate a small restaurant with a beer and wine license that will go by the name of Crew, and will primarily serve as what it sounds like will be a great little kind of wine bar with some beer options and then some fun kind of small plate food concept. So sounds pretty cool. Their proposed hours of operation are between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. and they plan to have approximately 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, so pretty small. It'll be located in that new commercial space, and the suite they'll be located in is just a bit over 1,600 square feet. And then it also has additional outdoor patio space for guests. All planning and building regulations for the building were obviously met at the time of the building application for the entire structure, so that one's good to go. The lot's designated WB3 or General Business District, and the growth policy definition for this area is commercial core, which is compatible with the current use. Adjacent land uses in all directions are also part of the General Business District, and a little bit of background on our zoning code as far as the need for a conditional use permit on the project. Restaurants are an allowable use in the zone, but due to the type of beer and wine license they'll be operating under, our code requires a CUP under the definition of kind of a bar and lounge. So yeah, that's kind of why they need it. Seems kind of pretty straightforward, but and then another thing to note about the WB3 zone is that it encompasses the nearby Old Town Railway District and Central Districts for which this project is located nearby, and it also encompasses the Downtown Business District Master Plan Shopping Loop, which is just adjacent to the project. Given that the new business will provide a place to eat and drink and socialize nearby the downtown core, it seems like it'll fit both current and future zoning uses pretty nicely. The project was noticed in the pilot, sign was outside, and a mailing was sent to adjacent landowners within 300 feet. Prior to the planning board meeting, there was no public comment. However, since then we've received 2 comments, both in favor of the project, kind of just for reasons of being so close to downtown, supplying additional eating and drinking opportunities and that sort of a thing. And then there wasn't a ton of discussion from the planning board on this one, besides just being generally in favor of the application for similar reasons to the folks that commented. The board ended up unanimously recommending approval of the CUP by City Council, subject to the 6 conditions outlined in the staff report. If you haven't had a chance to look over those, they include topics of outdoor lighting, signage, and just kind of general issues of music on the patio there. I don't really have too much more to add, and I'm sure a lot of you have been by the new building, so kind of exciting. And yeah, I'll open up for questions, and I believe Emily's here as well.
Great, thank you, Tara. Any questions for Tara on her staff report from council?
I have one question. This is Rebecca. Are the restaurants across the street, did they close at 10 as well? So this is similar, I think, to what's already there operationally, right?
I know it's similar. I don't know the exact time they close. I don't know if anyone else can kind of chime in. I know it's not too late, but 10 would be pretty early for that area in general, as far as I know.
Any other questions for Tara? All right, without any more questions from council, I'd like to open up the public hearing this evening. And if Emily is here and would like to comment on her application, we'd certainly like to hear from her.
So Emily, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute your mic and you would have the floor. Having
No, I think I just noted a text from her, or it said she's having audio issues, and that unless there are specific questions for her as the applicant, she doesn't have any comments to make. With that noted, are there any other comments from the public on this particular matter?
So please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody. Let's give them just a little bit longer, just because it seems having issues tonight with WebEx. Please send me a chat or *3 or hover over your name and raise your hand. Okay, I don't see anybody, Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you so much. Then I think we'll close the public hearing at this time and turn it back to council for a motion and further discussion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would motion to approve WCUP 21-01 with the finding of facts and conditions as approved by the Whitefish Planning Board.
I'll second it.
So a motion by Councilor Davis and seconded by Councilor Cornell. The motion's on the floor. Ben, do you need to speak to your motion at all?
I just look forward to stopping by.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the motion?
No.
Michelle, I think you can take a roll call.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Davis?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
And Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the motion passes unanimously. And we move on to our last public hearing this evening. I think we have, what is it? Resolution 2104, as I read this correctly, resolution establishing solid waste rates. And I think this is yours, Dana.
That mute button can be touchy. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and City Council. This evening I'm presenting to you the resolution to set solid waste rates for our residential and commercial garbage services within city limits. Just on January 4th, the City Council approved a new 5-year service agreement with Republic Services that will extend services with them for the next 5 years. Part of that agreement was to transfer billing services to the City of Whitefish. We will start billing for services starting March 16th, 2021. So just here in a couple months. Before we do so, we do have to have rates that are set through the public process for us to continue charging customers. What we've done is in our rates, we've taken the rates charged by Republic Services and completed an analysis to make sure that we have administrative fees available to cover the costs for us to process billing, mailing billing, the software used to manage that transition. But the overall good news is that what we have done is also kept the rates the same or potentially less for some commercial properties. The same though, overall was our goal, to keep the rates the same with this transition. We don't want our customers impacted by this transition. So while our costs of service to provide billing may be higher at this point, we are utilizing the same staff and the same software. So we'll do an in-depth analysis of our cost of service for garbage versus water versus sewer when it comes to the billing side. And we'll work on that this summer. But in the meantime, we can adequately fund our services of billing and the cost of garbage at the current rate charged by Republic. So the administrative fee on residential is $1.28 per month, and then on commercial it's a little bit higher, and that's going to be at $4.50 per month. The commercial side, overall rates are the same. There are just some little nuances with the way that Republic charges their administrative fee, which is $6.20. And so it is my anticipation that we will actually have some commercial customers see a decrease, but not all of them. And so for those lucky ones, they'll have a decrease in their costs. But again, it was just the way that when we negotiated rates, the difference in administrative fee on a single pickup per week versus multiple pickups per week and how they calculated that. As we move forward, we will of course do the analysis, but we will also reassess our rates annually like we do water and sewer to make sure that we're still on track to covering the cost of service provided. We do have reserves in our solid waste fund. One of the good things we did, which I'm glad that we've done so, is that we've maintained our solid waste fund this entire time. And so we have, roughly $47,000 in cash reserves that will help with any transition costs during this period. So we'll not need to borrow any funds. I'm confident that we'll be able to accommodate these changes and the reduced admin fee through this fiscal year, as well as through October when our rates generally are addressed. So, and again, when we talk about rates, I want to be clear that water and sewer right now probably have a higher admin fee than solid waste should, and so it's really going to be a shuffling of those admin rates between water, sewer, and garbage. And the reason we need to do that is each fund, each enterprise fund, solid waste is one, water is one, and sewer is one, they operate as their own business in our accounting records. And so that's why we eventually want to address that. But again, this is not going to be causing a cost increase for our customers, and we're happy that we're able to do this. It allows us to provide one utility bill to Whitefish residents for water, sewer, and garbage now moving forward. So with that said, I respectfully recommend that the City Council approve the proposed resolution adopting fees for solid waste disposal.
Any questions for Dana on her staff report?
I have one question. Sorry. We had a written comment sent to us from Michelle just this evening about a gentleman that was worried about, he takes his garbage to the dump, I guess, and was wondering why he has to pay any fees when he's lived here 42 years. Would you mind addressing that, Dana, just so people understand why the city has to charge everybody?
Absolutely. So back in the day, and I want to say this is very early on in our community in the 30s or 40s, maybe, I can't recall off the top of my head. It's been a very long time. That garbage was an issue. And to address that, the council at the time required garbage service of all residents. And what that does is ensure that the service is available to those in Whitefish so that we don't have any garbage issues. We do charge regardless if the service is used, and that has been a process that's been in place for many years. With the COVID pandemic, we have heard a few more comments from our second homeowners about that, and rightfully so, with those from Canada who can't access their property. But at the same time, the rates that we've been able to secure with Republic Services is based on a citywide requirement that these rates be paid regardless of service. And so it's important to know that if we were to go away from that model, our garbage rates would absolutely go up.
Thank you, Dana. Any other questions for Dana on her staff report?
I have a couple of questions, Dana. I just want to make it clear that everyone has already been charged, right? In the past, like even under Republic. How does that work?
Yes, so even under Republic, they were following the same requirement of if you were going to have, or if you're a city property with a building on it, then you are subject to paying for garbage service. Yes.
Okay. And then it looks like, according to this, that is it for one pickup per week. Is one cart $12.64? I'm a little confused.
So it's $10.78 for a residential cart. So that's I believe it's 96 gallons or 90 gallon. I think it's 96. One of those two. The normal cart, your residential cart, it's $10.78 a month. Now, one of the tricky things is Republic bills on a quarterly system, and we're now moving to a monthly system. So it'd be $10.78 a month for a one pickup per week for a residential cart. Now, you're looking at the commercial rates. So the commercial rates are different right below.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize I was being billed quarterly. It seemed like I was being billed monthly by Republic, and it was $30-something. Felt like it was $30-something a month, but maybe it was only quarterly.
Yeah, I believe they're only billing quarterly. At least that was what we were informed. And the city's broken into different sections, and so some are billed like January through March, some February through April. They'll be refunding any amounts that they collected for periods past March 16th. So they're going to process all refunds for that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Any other questions for Dana? With that, I'd like to open up the public hearing this evening on this Resolution 21-04, resolution establishing solid waste rates. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on this matter?
So if you do, please raise your hand. As mentioned before, hover over your name in the participants list to the right of your page. Find the hand icon and click on it. Or you can *3 on your phone, or send me a chat through the chat button towards the bottom of the page to the right. Type your question and hit enter, or the three dots to the left of the X. I don't see any, Deputy Mayor, and Councilor Norton did mention that one letter that we did receive that will be appended to the packet tomorrow.
Great, thank you. With that said, I'll close the public hearing and turn the matter back to council for a motion and any further discussion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would move that we approve resolution number 20-04, which is a resolution establishing solid waste rates.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councilor Fury and seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Did I get that correct?
That is correct.
Any further discussion from council on the motion? Hearing none. Michelle, you can take a roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell,
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Davis,
In favor.
Councilor Fury,
In favor.
and Councilor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you. Frank, you're muted.
That passed unanimously. And with that, we'll move on to our item 7 of our agenda, communications from our public work directors. Consideration of an ordinance amending Title 6, Chapter 2, Section 4 regarding prohibited and restricted parking. Craig, I think you're up.
Thank you. Good evening again. So in an effort to belabor this as much as possible, I haven't really drafted an ordinance yet. What I wanted to do was come to council on sort of a preliminary basis to chat about some of these things before I go through that process. Let me just get to the beginning of my staff report. You guys should be looking at the map showing the no parking on Spokane Avenue. So the Public Works Department does receive requests on a fairly regular basis from residents, property owners, business owners, et cetera, to evaluate various parking and traffic restrictions. Typically, Public Works would, basically evaluate these on their merits and update the ordinance for council to consider. Typically, as I mentioned, these requests are fairly straightforward, and I'd simply just prepare the ordinance for your consideration. However, this most recent round has the potential to have some much broader effects than the normal group of no parking or parking requests. So I wanted to get some direction from council on how you wish to proceed with these. The first one is what you're looking at on your screen right now. It was a request from the Big Mountain Commercial Association for a new bus stop on the 300 block of Spokane Avenue. With essentially what BMCA is doing is taking the snow bus off of Central Avenue with changes to the physical structure over the last decade or so. The path through the center of town has become more and more dangerous for bus drivers. And therefore, beginning this year, the snow bus is no longer traveling on Central Avenue south of Railway. They still make the loop kind of around Depot Park and come down Central Avenue past O'Shaughnessy, but they're not traveling south of Railway. According to the Big Mountain Commercial Association, this location on Spokane Avenue is ideally situated to serve downtown businesses, residents of nearby neighborhoods, lodging properties, schools, etc. And the highly visible area will also help with outreach, letting visitors know that there is a free bus service in town. What did I just do? Sorry about that. Too many screens for me to navigate. So in addition to the snow bus, it's intended that this stop will also serve other transit providers. The issue that we run into is this is a state highway. And so according to MDT, who owns and maintains the roadway, construction will necessitate a 150-foot landing area to provide sufficient ingress and egress and room for the bus to pick up travelers. So creating that 150-foot, to get in and out and park essentially wipes out all of the parking on both sides of the northern half of the 300 block of Spokane Avenue. There's already some considerable no parking because of the alley in this location, and so we're losing, estimate about 2 stalls on the east side and 4 stalls on the west side. I think we heard from Jenny earlier this evening that the snow bus would be willing to consider other locations, but this is obviously one that I want to talk about. The next one is on Baker Avenue. This is a request that came from Rob Stern, who owns 16 Baker Avenue. He would like to add parking on the west side of Baker in front of 10 and 16 Baker Avenue. This is across the street from Marcus Foods. The building at 16 Baker Avenue recently converted to condominiums with commercial space on the first floor and 2 lodging units on the second floor. Although there are 2 parking spaces designated in the garage off the alley, 1 for each lodging unit, there is not any parking for the commercial use on the first floor. And so these 2 to 3 parking spaces could create some additional parking for that commercial use, as well as the other businesses in the area. Parking is permitted on both sides of Baker Avenue, 1 block south. So that would be alongside City Hall and American Bank. And there is room, I believe, for additional parking in this proposed area. Allowing this parking could prevent, it could create, one of the issues that I have noted is that currently vehicles waiting to turn left into Marcus Food, that is southbound traffic on Baker, you could have vehicles that would go around those staged vehicles, and this parking would prevent that. That being said, I've sat out there on a couple of occasions since this request came in, and I really don't see any vehicles waiting to turn left into Marcus. It seems like most of the southbound traffic turns on Railway and then comes into Marcus from the north. So I'm not sure that's really a huge concern. The next one is on Montana Avenue. I think this one's fairly straightforward. It's essentially been a request of numerous residents in this neighborhood requesting no parking on the east side of Montana Avenue, adjacent to 312. So in this area, kind of just north of Edgewood Place on the east side of Montana Avenue. The location is at the foot of a steep hill, and parking creates difficulties for vehicles turning onto Montana from Edgewood. It also increases the risk for motorists and makes snow removal more difficult. Creating this no parking will eliminate about 2 parking spaces. And I think the properties most directly affected do have plenty of off-street parking. The final request that has been made is on East 4th Street. This would be no parking on the northeast half of that block, which is the 100 block, or excuse me, the 300 block of East 4th Street. So let me get to that map. So it would be the northeast half in this area and the southwest half in this area. The section of roadway does serve a pretty busy residential and commercial area and sees a considerable amount of traffic trying to avoid the signal at 2nd and Baker. When vehicles are parked in these areas, it does create difficulties for vehicles turning onto East 4th Street from Baker Avenue, as well as difficulties turning onto East 4th Street from Lupfer. The roadway really isn't wide enough for 4 vehicles, and so when there's vehicles parked on both sides, it really only leaves room for 1 vehicle to get by at a time. Creating this no parking area will eliminate approximately 3 spaces, just 1 in this area on the northeast half of the block. There's already no parking because of the exit from the credit union. And then 2 parking spaces kind of in this area on the southwest. There's a fairly good-sized driveway approach for the overflow parking at the post office. So it's really 2 spots here and kind of 1 right here. Not really much to talk about in terms of financial requirement. I estimate about $250 in signage that would have to go up. So ultimately, as I mentioned, if council wishes to see any of these take place, it will require a public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment. And I guess I'd really like, if we could, just to go through these kind of each one by one and give me a little direction on how you'd like to proceed, if that's okay.
Okay, Craig, why don't the best way to proceed, let's go through these one by one, start at the beginning again, and then we'll kind of go through a roll call with staff, or excuse me, with the council, and see if they've got any comments on what we ought to do there, and then we can move through each one that way pretty efficiently, I think.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. Okay, sounds good. So the first one is Spokane Avenue, be no parking on this 300 block. Eliminating basically 2 stalls here in front of the old Chamber of Commerce and the JCCS building, and about 4 stalls on the west side. I think these stalls are pretty popular. I see them utilized a significant amount of the time, and it's a tricky one when it comes to parking and an important service like the snow bus. So if anybody has any comments on those. We obviously heard from Jenny that there could be some other opportunities, and I'd be happy to work with her on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Andy, you have any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Craig's right, those spots do get used quite a bit, although I have to say the ones on the west side of Spokane do create a little bit of a visual obstruction for anyone trying to make a right-hand or a left-hand turn actually out onto Spokane off of 3rd. But they are spaces, and you always hate to lose them. I think it's a good spot for the snow bus, though. I think that is really something that would work well there. And I think bringing some visibility to it, I think Jenny's right on that. I think that would be a positive for it. So, I mean, I would be in favor of moving forward with a public hearing on this one and seeing what the public has to say about it.
Okay. Ben, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with Andy. I think having a good stop for the snow bus is important. I really don't know what other options could be considered here. If there was any that you felt make sense, Craig, I'd love to hear about them. And I'm also wondering how this fits into the transportation plan and whether this is a significant enough item to have any feedback in the plan itself.
Okay. Councilor Norton. Good.
Are you done, Ben? You're okay? Okay, I agree with Andy. I think it is a really good spot for it. My office is between 4th and 5th on Spokane, so I walk by here a lot. The visibility is really hard. People come, they turn the corner to start increasing in speed from 93 and out to 40, and so if someone's parked along the west side, it can be a little bit unsafe getting in and out, I think. But I'm wondering if I'm okay with proceeding with a public hearing, but I also think it might be good to have a trial period with it if possible, and also look at other options. Rhonda's idea of moving the catchment area down south, it's a little bit more difficult because you're congregating people on private property. Most of the area from that area south is individual smaller places, and so both of those locations would have wider sidewalks and areas where people could be congregating without problems. But it's yeah, I think it would work. It's just, again, losing more parking downtown. But I'm up for proceeding.
Councilor Cornell, any comments?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Andy. I also, the other question that I have is, if not here, where? Because this seems like the most reasonable spot. It's close to town, and it makes sense to me for a bus stop there, because it's in front of a business, it's in front of a bank with a big parking lot. Of course, we hate to lose parking anywhere, but it seems like we're going to lose some parking no matter where we put this extra bus stop. And it seems to me the closer to town, the more likely riders will use the snow bus if they don't have to walk as far. And at the same time, I'd like to see what other options might be available. So, but I think this is, to me, this is a good spot for it.
Great, thanks. Craig, the only thought I've got on this one is I agree with virtually everything everybody said so far. My only other rhetorical question is, do we need both sides of Spokane for the bus stop? And that's just, again, a rhetorical question. I think I think it's probably worth bringing this to a public hearing, given what we know. I would also be open to discussing where else this might go, but my personal view is that I think this is probably a great place for it because of the profile of the area, as well as the fact that the snow bus will become a much more prominent part of the community as a result of it having a bus stop there. But that's we'll find out if there's a public hearing on the matter, whether everybody feels like. I think you feel comfortable with what you've got so far?
Yep, good direction. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and next item.
All right, so the next one takes us over to Baker Avenue. So far on our tally, we're potentially down 6 spaces. This would add 3, so we'll get half of them back if we like this one. Again, just a request from Rob Stern that owns this building here at 16 Baker. There is a little exit only approach onto Baker between the 2 buildings, but it's my understanding that the owner of 10 Baker doesn't use that and would prefer to have parking in that area anyway, and could potentially be coming forward for conditional use on this property nonetheless. But this green line's a little bit off. I think it would actually come a little further south, somewhere into this area, and it could be 3 potential stalls right on the west side of Baker. As I mentioned, the one concern that I did see with this, it is a fairly busy area. It could help to calm traffic some by having this parking, but you can see there, like, for example, if this vehicle here were waiting to turn left, the vehicle now could go around. Parked vehicles would prevent that, but as I mentioned, I observed it on a couple of occasions during the lunch rush at Marcus, which with Pig and Olive there right now can be fairly robust, and I haven't seen that situation arise, so I'm not really too concerned about it.
Great. Councilor Fury, any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple. I have to pull my map back up here. Somehow this one kind of bothers me, and I think it's in large part due to the busyness of that area, and in part the fact that on the east side of the block, you've got basically an unrestricted for the entire length of the block egress and ingress in and out of the Marcus Foods building there, which I think creates a lot of weird kind of traffic situations there. I think Craig's right. It could potentially provide some traffic calming measures there because, as we all know as well, it's 35 miles an hour off the viaduct. When you're at that point, it should be 25 miles an hour, but the reality is most people are still going 35. So then I kind of worry a little bit about that, about people opening their driver's side door to jump out when there's, pedestrians crossing. And so, yeah, I'm not super in favor of this. I would have to say that, I guess.
Okay. Councilor Davis.
I don't have any particular objections to this, as long as it's safe. And part of me does kind of think maybe it does kind of help ease the transition into, hey, you're coming into downtown, and just in terms of traffic calming and just the general feel of driving into it. But I don't have any strong feelings about this one either way.
Great. Councilor Norton.
I'm actually against this. I think it would be dangerous. I just drove it earlier today, and a few days ago I had to drop off a flag that had gotten ripped at the VFW, and so I pulled into their parking lot to go inside and drop it off, and I had to back out onto Baker, and it was quite frightening. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't even know where the sidewalk is or how to do that. It was really a tight, obviously I survived, but I think if we had parking there, in addition to the VFW having so much traffic in and out, I think it would be dangerous. And then also we have bicyclists coming down off the viaduct. We have buses coming down across the viaduct. The snow berms and the snow, you can't really see turning lines on there. I just think it's way too congested to add something like a stationary car that people have to maneuver around. And it is a half a block away from our parking structure. So the owner did elect to turn his business into, short-term rentals. So he knew that there were parking restrictions that were going to be, that the parking would go towards those units. So I think there's enough alternative parking spots. And I think if we approved it, they would stick out too much with our weather patterns, and it could be very unsafe with people driving quick downhill right towards that area. So I'm not in favor of proceeding with this one.
Okay. Councilor Cornell.
I'm not in favor of this. I mean, just looking at it from an overview, you can tell it's just pasted in there. Even if it's not quite in the right spot, it doesn't make sense to add 3 or 4 parking spaces right there. This is one of the busiest places, one of the busiest roadways in the whole city, especially, well, any time of year now. And putting those spots there just really doesn't make sense. I don't think we should use traffic. I don't think we should use parking as a traffic calming measure. If there's got to be other ways we can figure out how to calm traffic. I mean, it kind of calms itself because there's rarely a time when you come over that viaduct and you don't have to slow down by the time you get to that where those parking spaces would be. It does not make sense to have parked cars right there in front of that building. And I do agree with Rebecca that this is a very specialized request from somebody who built a short-term rentals right there and now wants us to put parking there for his clients. And that just doesn't sit well with me either, especially since it's kitty corner to our parking garage, which is why we have a parking garage. So I'm not in favor of this one.
Okay. Craig, you think you got direction on this one?
Yep, I think I'm good to go there.
Okay.
The next one is over on Montana Avenue. Again, this is one that I typically would just take to ordinance and have a public hearing and notify the adjacent property owners. And so unless there's any strong objection, I'll just plan to include this one. I think it's a typical, just a sort of a safety improvement that we'd be looking to make. So unless anybody wants to have any conversation about this, I don't want to drag this on any longer than I have to.
Great, thank you. Any objection from any member of council on putting this one to a public hearing?
I lived on Montana Avenue 35 years ago, and I can tell you it's a good idea. So
great. Okay, Craig. I think
yeah, we've heard from a number of residents there. Okay, so the last one is over here on East 4th Street. Again, it would be just one stall on the northeast half of the block. The rest of this is already no parking, and then it would be about 2 stalls over here on the southwest half. I think what I heard during comments from the public, Richard, I think the biggest concern is really this spot right here. So if you want to kind of poll the council, Frank, that'd be great. I'd just look for a little feedback on this one.
Andy, any thoughts?
I agree with this one. I think it's come to us many, many times from many different people, and yeah, I agree.
Okay. Ben?
Concur with Andy.
Rebecca?
Yep, I drove through it today and it was so much more narrow than I thought. So I'm glad we're going to keep the parking spots along the north side of the post office. But yeah, I think it's a really good idea, actually. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Councillor Cornell?
Yeah, I agree with the one spot on the north side of the road. The ones that are above the post office on the south side of the road, I think should stay. The other question I have is what, just the ingress and egress from the one in and out from the post office is really the problem, the bigger part of the problem. And what would it look like to change that to spill out onto 4th instead of right onto Baker? That's my other question. And maybe that's been asked and answered.
I think it's a great issue.
I mean, what if we put it down by the stop sign that you came out of the post office there? If you cut and then don't have an access on Baker.
I think that ship sailed when the post office went in there. I don't think we get to play games with their ingress, egress, or what their parking requirement is. If I'm recalling correctly, I think we were preempted from having any influence on that.
Okay, well, that's just my overall design from a 10,000 foot perspective. That would be the better place to have the ingress and egress from the post office. But if we don't have control over that, we don't. So I'm in favor of eliminating the parking on the north side of 4th Street, but not the south. I don't think those spots are that problematic.
Okay. What I'm hearing, Craig, is that there are 3 counselors, and I'll include myself, for 4 counselors that I'm perfectly happy to bring both of these to a public hearing. I think Steve's concern is that he wouldn't be in favor of eliminating the parking on, I guess, on the south side of 4th Street, but I think maybe that could be hashed out at a public hearing.
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Okay, that's the
Great.
direction I needed. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that said, I think we can move on to item 8, which is communications from our fire chief this evening. Consideration of appointing members to a rating panel and selection committee for the Whitefish Fire Department master plan. Chief?
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and City Council. The fire department has requested qualifications from firms to do a master plan study, which is in our budget for this year. I'm requesting that you establish a selection committee consisting of myself, City Manager Dana Smith, and your members, the mayor. Thankfully, thank you for your consideration. And, available for any questions.
Council, any questions for Joe or recommendations?
I'd say yes, we should go ahead and do this. If you need a volunteer, I'd be happy to volunteer. But I don't know if the mayor's willing to do it.
Yeah, I don't have any idea either, Rebecca, at this point. And so I guess what I would recommend is that we, in fact, proceed with appointing Joe and Dana and tentatively appoint the mayor subject to his agreement. If he doesn't agree, we can bring this back, Joe, I assume, and ask for volunteers from the council if this moves forward. Is that correct?
Frank, it would be ideal to have maybe a backup if John doesn't, because we'd like to get this going as soon as possible. So waiting 2 weeks to just review because we already have receipt of the proposals. So
Okay.
if we could have a backup from one of you to fill in for John if he says no, that would be great.
Okay. Well, I think if I would appreciate a motion from council to that effect or to whatever end you might like as a collective.
Nobody else wants to do it. I've been kind of following what's been going on with the fire district, so I'd be happy to step up as an alternate to the mayor.
Great. Dana, I think what you're asking for is a motion to appoint the committee. And so Rebecca, would be great if you could give me a motion to the effect that you would like to appoint Chief Page, City Manager Smith, and the mayor, and you would like to act as alternate for the selection panel.
Okay, I'd like to, let's see, I'm trying to figure out what to say. Move forward with appointing the rating panel and selection committee for the Whitefish Fire Department Master Plan Project to include Fire Chief Joe Page, City Manager Dana Smith, John Mulfeld, Mayor possibly, and Rebecca Norton as an alternate.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Councilor Norton and seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none. Michelle, can you take a roll call?
Councilor Quinnell,
In favor.
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Davis,
Favor.
Councilor Fury,
In favor.
and Councilor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the matter passes unanimously. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is we have communications from the city manager. Dana, anything further report since your written report?
I can just say that the legislature is keeping us very busy, myself, and along with union negotiations starting up tomorrow with our police union, and fire will be the next week. I've got a full plate. So House Bill 259, though, is going to committee tomorrow afternoon. Councilor Davis will be providing comment on behalf of the city, since I will be in negotiations at that point. I have submitted written testimony, however, and the steering committee, the housing authority, and council were all informed of that date as well. So that bill is the one that will prohibit inclusionary zoning and make our legacy homes program no longer a program. So we'll keep you posted on the outcomes of that. There are other bills that the legislature we're monitoring. Last I checked, we had at least 268 House bills and, oh man, now I can't even remember, close to 100 or over 100 Senate bills. So it's busy, and there are a lot more drafts still coming out. Some of them are interesting and right to work legislation. There's interlocal agreements. That one was approved with amendments. There was one that was going to limit interlocal agreements to 5 years. They've amended that one, and it did pass committee. So it only is going to impact interlocal agreements that are based on zoning jurisdiction around a city and a county. So at least that one's been addressed with amendments to make it so that we can still have interlocal agreements longer than 5 years, but just in certain circumstances will it be limited to 5. That was a result of our donut lawsuit. So other than that, though, I'm keeping monitoring them. If you guys have questions, please reach out to me. If you hear of a bill or you have comments from the public, I'm happy to answer, at least answer your questions as much as I can or research it for you. From that, the vaccine clinic still is in the planning stages. I have a call tomorrow. Our fire department is going to assist by just kind of being on standby with our ambulance nearby should there be any anaphylactic shock or any bad symptoms, so that the public can feel secure that they're able to get to the hospital immediately if they have something happen with their second shot. To my knowledge, I haven't heard of that happening in our valley, or and I probably wouldn't be aware of it, but sounds like it's gone pretty smooth though for the clinics. Hopefully we'll get that location solidified. We will have an MOU with the hospital for us to have volunteers. We confirmed with MMIA that our liability insurance needs us to make it very clear how we're participating in this clinic, because we have exclusions for operating any type of business that distributes medication to individuals, vaccinations, those kind of things. So we have that MOU drafted, approved by MMIA, and the hospital is just reviewing that. So we might have staff helping with phone calls. First they thought they had it covered, but it sounds like we might not have it covered this time. So we're happy to help where we can. I think vaccinations, the actual physical vaccinations are probably going to be the limiting factor though, just however many doses the state can get and allocate to our county. And then one other item though in my manager's report is the housing committee. We're due to have an update for our housing needs assessment and the strategic plan. That was not included in the fiscal year 21 budget. However, if you've also read the manager's report, we did receive a significant amount of CARES funding. Not to mention we also have reserves built in for our general fund. I'd like to get just a general consensus from the council that I can proceed with a contract with Reese Consulting, who did our needs assessment, to update that. The estimated cost is around $20,000. It's under the limit for having to go out to bid. Quotes we could do, but one of the benefits of having Reese update their study is that they already did it. And so there's going to be cost efficiencies in having them update their own work versus having somebody come in new and have to do the research. So if I could just get a consensus, we're going to be doing a budget amendment anyways for the city, for the general fund budget due to CARES funding. But I do feel that we have budget authority in the planning department for what we included. I think it was $50,000 for items that would have normally been covered by our TIF fund, such as this plan. So we have the budget authority. It just wasn't specifically noted as being used for this needs assessment. So I'd like the council to just kind of give me that direction that you're comfortable with that, knowing that we'll be having a budget amendment anyways in August. So that should be it.
Great, Dana. Is there, I guess maybe the easier way to do this, is there any objection to Dana proceeding with this contract? Okay, not seeing any. We'll see you. You got what you need. Any other questions from Dana, for Dana on her staff report?
A question, Dana. It's more to do with, well, it's not a, oh, no, are we still going through COVID? Or could I ask a COVID question now?
Yes, Becca,
okay.
proceed.
So what I'm wondering is there's some establishments downtown that are not masking according to our current mandate. And I'm just wondering what the status is of how people report, and if there's any educational component, or is there any enforcement? Is it going through this health department or through our city? I just wasn't sure where we were at with it all.
So Rebecca, our ordinance will not go into effect until the governor removes the current mask mandate. If you guys wanted to update it and run it concurrently, we would have to come back with a public hearing. Angie, correct me if I'm wrong. But that is my understanding. So we are not doing any enforcement at the city level currently. It would be through the state. Enforcement at the state level is going to be likely minimal, if any. So I haven't checked on where that bill is about the civil liability for businesses regarding COVID, because I know that was one of the bills that the governor was using to determine when he would remove the mask mandate. So we're going to have to just kind of wait and see, unless you'd like to bring that forward as a public hearing so we can start enforcing now.
Actually, I would like to bring it forward as a public hearing. I just didn't understand that there was absolutely no enforcement whatsoever anywhere. So I just figured we were still in the status where if someone saw something that was unsafe, they could report it to the city or to the health department. But what you're saying is both of those have gone by the wayside.
Currently, yes. Currently, ours is not in effect. And the health department, you can submit ones online. It doesn't look like they took down their complaint form, but the governor's new mandate does not give authority to the counties, actually. It was really specific to state enforcement, I believe. It pulled that part of it out, actually.
So I guess I'm wondering, is there any positive feelings from any other counselors to bring this forward in the next few weeks to enact our own mask ordinance so we have some enforcement? No. Okay, I'll have to work on you guys behind the scenes then. Thanks.
I guess I'd make one comment. My guess is that by the time we would have a public hearing and amend our ordinance to have it go into effect, the governor will probably have dropped the statewide mandate, and then we would go into effect.
Well, except he is
Exactly.
saying, you know, that it will be based on vaccination rates. He's got some criteria, so I'm not sure when the mask ordinance will actually be pulled at a statewide level. But we, as a chartered city, have the right to do more than even at the state level. Anyways, I was kind of alarmed to hear this from a downtown merchant because they're doing everything they can to keep their employees and their visitors safe. But, you know, other places are not. And so there's a lot of conflict now between what our expectations are as a city in terms of keeping the interior space safe from this virus that now has 2 to 3 more mutations that are even more dangerous and more transmissible. So I'd like you guys to think about it. I'll try to maybe bring up more ideas about this. I do not think we need to be passive in the middle of a pandemic. But thank you.
And Rebecca, I'll just add real quickly that there are multiple bills of the legislature that would remove any right from a city actually enforcing a mask mandate. So we're very carefully watching those as well, because that would make our current ordinance ineffective, as well as any future ordinances. So just be aware that it might come to a point where we can't do anything based on the state action.
All right, Dana, thank you.
Rebecca, I do want to just say that I do appreciate the sentiment, and I agree with your ideas. It's just not. I don't know what benefit we're going to meet out of it by doing it. The people that aren't willing to follow the mask mandate are not going to follow it, no matter who mandates it. And the slap on the wrist that we would give them from our enforcement would not be enough to make them do it. They'd probably challenge it in court, and they would probably win based on everything that's gone down. And unfortunately, that's the environment we live in. And as a governing body, we have to recognize that and pay attention to it, even though I would imagine that most of us sitting here would rather us do this and get it done and have it out there. And at the same time, the benefit of it is we're not going to see the benefit of it as a governing body. And that's the unfortunate reality of it. But I do appreciate your sentiment, and I do agree with your sentiment there, Rebecca.
Good. That sounds like a one vote for it. All right. I know it's a difficult subject because of what we've had to deal with this last year with a lot of disinformation and the politics of it. But I still think we are responsible for setting a standard based on science that keeps our citizens safe. So maybe we could talk about it in a couple weeks where we're at after the legislative changes occur too. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. Any other questions for Dana on her staff report? Hearing none. I think we'll move on to our item 10, which is communications from the mayor and city councilors. I think I'd like to start with Councilor Norton. Any further comments this evening?
I had a call from one of my friends who had a really close call with hitting black ice on the corner of 40 and 93. And she was going north. She's frequently traveled this intersection. It's the first time that she's ever had a situation where the roads appeared dry and she hit black ice, almost went into a car going south. And then there was another car going towards Columbia Falls that was also having a hard time getting traction. So she asked if there was any possibility that the road, that intersection had been changed by the removal of the trees at the development there. And because trees normally would be shielding probably precipitation or something. And so I just wondered what was going on with the trees and if there's some way that we should evaluate whether or not that has changed the safety of that intersection, not to have wind blocks. And I don't know how you do that, but she was pretty shaken up about it, and she felt like it was such an odd occurrence after living here for 25 years that I thought I would bring it up and see if we could at least assess it. I think when we went through that approval of that project, the transportation engineer never made it up to the valley to look at the site. He just modeled mathematically the changes from new DOT data, and Craig knew him and supported that way of doing it. But now I'm wondering if we shouldn't ask for more of an assessment to make sure that nobody dies there. Because it was not a snow day, it wasn't an icy day. The roads were normally, they appeared dry, and all of a sudden there was black ice that hadn't usually been there.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Craig, could you take a look at what they're doing at that intersection and see if anything's changed as a practical matter? It's been a terrible winter. I can tell you I have fallen more times this winter than I have in the past 20 collectively. It's just bad news out there. So, but anyway, if you take a look at that, I think that'd be helpful. At least we'd be monitoring what's going on. So thanks. Councilor Cornell.
Yeah, I just, I'm just going to keep plugging the safety issue on Caro between 7th and 2nd. Came up again today. I was driving, somebody was speeding up the other side and somebody was in my lane, walking their dog on the road. And we saw that the speeds on Caro were higher than any of the other places in the city. And from that intersection from 7th to 2nd is just, it's dangerous. Whatever we need to do, we need to figure out something that's going to make that intersection more safe. I've driven all over the city and there is no other stretch of road like that that's that dangerous, that people walk on consistently, or they're on the road because there's just nowhere else to walk. So that's all I have. Another shout out to Glacier Nordic Club for getting the golf course open, at least temporarily. I skied over there this afternoon. Yesterday morning was insanely great. This afternoon, it's like back to square one almost. So they are working their butts off to keep that open, and it's such a great asset to the city to have a place to cross country ski right in town. That's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Councilor Davis, anything from you this evening?
No comments from me. Thank you.
And Councilor Fury.
Yeah, I have a sort of lengthy comment here, and it's at the request of the mayor in his absence tonight, and it's to recognize the 5th anniversary of a couple of events that impacted this community. And the first is the signing of the conservation easement 5 years ago for Haskell Basin on this very day. February 1st, it went into effect. And I think we all understand how important that is, protecting the water supply for our community, but we also understand the recreational amenities and the wildlife corridors and the scenic backdrop it provides for us. And that didn't happen without a whole heck of a lot of hard work by a lot of different people. Seemed like 5 years ago, communities could actually work together and do really positive things and do things that worked for everybody. And we saw that certainly with the passage of the extra 1% on the resort tax. But we particularly need to look at the Stoltz family, obviously, and Paul McKenzie and Chuck Rohde from Stoltz, and countless hours of staff time from the city, countless hours of volunteer time from Whitefish Legacy Partners, from all of the people that worked hard on the campaign to get the resort tax amended. But it sadly comes also with the notation that it's also the 5th anniversary of the passing of Alex Diekman. And without Alex Diekman pulling the mayor aside at a meeting in Bozeman and pointing at a map and saying, hey, what about this? None of this ever would have happened. And Alex Diekman, as we all know, worked for Trust for Public Lands and had a long history and great experience in bringing these kinds of conservation easements to pass all over the West. And I think Alex's infectious personality and his dogged pursuit of a good outcome and his considerable experience and his very, very engaging personality brought this all to fruition. And I know that through that process, the mayor and Alex became very, very good friends. And I know that he does miss him, and as we all do. And I think we as a community, hopefully every 5 years or every 1 year or 10 years, or when we go out on the trail or whatever we do, we can kind of keep Alex and his family in our hearts and our thoughts, because without him, we wouldn't have seen what we saw happen. But most importantly, what Alex brought us in that, and it's something I learned at an international lands conference we had here in the early 2000s when I was mayor, is what he brought us was an economic solution. And the best part about that is that economic solution does a lot of things. One, it keeps that working farm or working forest lands. But most importantly, that's a solution that will serve us in perpetuity. And it's not a legislative one that's going to change with an executive order every time we get a new president, a new county commission, a new governor, a new mayor, or whoever. That's there forever because we solved it economically. And I know personally, every time I go out on that trail, I think of Alex and I think of all of the hard work that everybody in this community put in to make that happen. And Alex, thank you. We're thinking about you.
Andy, thank you. That was outstanding. Thank you for doing that. Anything further from staff this evening? With that said, I cannot add to what Andy said or anything better. So with that, I think we're adjourned. Good night, all.